Welcome back to Close Up. The Republican sweep at the State House means the GOP will continue to hold power in Concord, but there could still be some changes as the key players are changing. Here to help us sort out how the next 2 years could unfold under the Golden Dome is political analyst Scott Spradling. Thanks for spending so much time with us this week.
My pleasure, Adam. It was great fun.
So let's start at the top, Scott. You know, Governor Chris Sununu had his differences at times, sort of under the radar often, but it would blow up here and there with House Republicans in particular in Concord. How do you see that relationship playing out with Governor Ayotte?
I think it'll be different. First and foremost, on the logistical and practicality, Kelly Ayotte will be able to have a very smooth transition with an extremely cooperative predecessor. And that could include an overlap of staff and appointees. So I think her transition in will be supported and therefore easier. But she has a new Senate president coming, most likely Sharon Carson, and a larger majority for Republicans. So there's a rebuild of relationships. She's a former AG. She knows what goes on behind the curtain at the State House, but now it's hers. And so it really is a doubling down of the relationships and trying to make sure that everybody is following the same agenda, which can be hard work when you have a big majority.
Winning is always a good thing in politics, but it gives you a different set of headaches when it comes to govern, essentially.
Yes.
How does this work out, you know, especially when you have, you know, Republican governor, Republican House, Republican Senate? Everyone has their priorities. You say, oh, we all agree on this, but then how much do we agree becomes the question, because you have to say no to your friends rather than your enemies.
That's absolutely true. And when you look at, take the Senate for an example. They were 14-10, now they're 16-8. A couple of friends of mine in the Senate who are on the Republican side have said, boy, it's a lot easier for us to stick together and get things done when there's only 13 of us as a simple majority versus 16 where you can have people going in different directions. Not unusual for big numbers and having a bunch of chiefs and not enough Indians. But Kelly Ayotte is a calm, cool, collected type of character, and I anticipate she'll lean in on some of those relationships and rely on some folks in the House and Senate to be able to keep her agenda the full focus.
And talk about that agenda a little bit. She's prioritized public safety. You mentioned she's a former prosecutor, former AG. That could be a friction point, especially with some of the more liberty-leaning Republicans who don't have the same priorities.
Yeah, this is true. It could be a more complicated conversation, especially over in the House. But with that said, if this is a part of her priority list, I do believe that House and Senate leadership as it's taking shape, will fall in line with her, especially on that issue. Because, for example, Sharon Carson, who's likely the next Senate president, is a big law enforcement, law and order type of senator. So I think those issues, and obviously the budget is going to be huge, Adam, and we'll see how they have to lead and make decisions that might be tough ones.
Senator Carson is formidable. Everybody who's up there knows this.
Yeah.
Can we not underestimate, though, how life will be different without President Jeb Bradley there?
Yeah.
This was a pros pro who served in Congress, and everybody talked about the Bradley special. He ended up acting as a goalie for Governor Sununu in some ways. A lot of political headaches never made it to the governor's desk because he was able to gobble them up there in the Senate.
Yeah, Jeb Bradley played a unique role as Senate president in that he was the guy that was trying to steer the ship and do big picture, but he wasn't afraid to get into the nitty-gritty on the major issues. That is huge. He also found ways to work beautifully with both parties and seamlessly on major issues that were really effective for the Senate. I'm not saying Sharon Carson can't do that, but she's a very different type of senator, and so it'll be a different type of a vibe. She'll play a role that is yet to be defined, and with, I'd say, Senators Bill Gannon and Daryl Abbas are two of the Republican senators that I'd keep an eye on as really important role players in the leadership team.
You covered the legislature back in the day for a long time. Where do the Democrats go from here? Because they don't really have the same kind of grasp on power, and in the House, there's not that attendance game we're watching anymore.
Yep.
They're a little bit stuck in the wilderness at this point.
Yeah, you're definitely. So Senate first, and you were the first to talk about this on Tuesday night. With Donna Soucy, and I know that'll be recounted, but with Donna Soucy presumably not winning a recount and not being there, you've lost Lou D'Alessandro and Donna Soucy in one fell swoop. They have to figure out, as a team of 8, who's going to be in charge, what is it going to look and sound like. There's some important decisions to be made there. Over in the House, it's the same thing, and I hearken back to many years ago when I had hair and I was doing this job, sitting down with Democratic leader Peter Burling at the time, who suffered big defeats, and basically in an interview with him, he said, listen, all we can do is call balls and strikes, be clear about what our agenda is, offer some running commentary because we're not going to win any votes, and try to stay focused on the issues that matter most to the people of New Hampshire. And you know, that, going back to what Governor Sununu said a few minutes ago on this set, is really important for Democrats as a whole, because I'm not sure they did enough of that in this election cycle. They need to get back to being connected to the issues that matter most to people.
Do you think we're going to start to see presidential candidates come here sooner than ever on the Democratic side in particular? That demand is probably going to be there for, you know, Democrats who want to turn the page.
Yeah, Adam, yes, and I think that's a great thing for the first of the nation primary status after we watched the games being played by the Dems before. I don't think we'll see that this time around. And yes, I think we'll start to see some tire kickers and folks finding excuses and reasons to come to New Hampshire for a dinner, a banquet, or something else to be able to just start making some introductions, because 4 years does go quick. And the one thing we do know is we've got an open election 4 years from now. So building those relationships starts in earnest.
I'll ask you the same thing I asked Governor Sununu. He didn't really take the bait. It's, you know, it's a tough one always with Trump. Do you think Trump will allow a normal process to unfold here on the Republican side?
Yes and no. I think by default he's going to have to. I agree with the governor that what looks like the building of his senior staff around him is a different exercise than last time around. There's more discipline being shown. But the one thing we know about Donald Trump is that he hates not being in the spotlight, and it's his for 4 years. But at the same time, he will play a role of maybe helping select who the next nominee is, and I'm assuming that he'll have his thumb on the scale in some way, shape, or form. His relationship with the New Hampshire presidential primary being so tight, we'll see what that looks like. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see President Trump coming back to New Hampshire as a part of that conversation.
And certainly, as we're looking at the margin tighten, looks like it's going to be closer than ever here in New Hampshire. So he came close to even winning this state.
He did.
Scott Spradling, thanks for joining us on Close Up. We always appreciate the time.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, that wraps up this edition of Close Up New Hampshire. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the politics page on our website and mobile app for more in-depth analysis and to sign up for our weekly newsletter. We'll be back next week. Have a great Sunday.